Welcome to Materials and Methods Matter. In this episode, I will demonstrate the process of using charcoal in a reductive drawing technique on a sanguine-toned paper. The first step for reductive technique drawing is to prepare the surface. For this, you will need a cream drawing paper, sanguine powder, and a soft oval sponge. Before we begin, a word of caution. It is highly recommended that you wear a face mask when working with dry pigments and powders, and wash your hands afterward. Let's begin by taping down our page to our surface. When using any kind of powders like this, you definitely want to use a non-absorbent surface so that it's easy to clean up. But we want to take our sanguine powder with our soft sponge and basically rub it into the surface. Next, lightly spray your toned sheet of paper with a workable fixative. Spray indirectly at the surface in a well-ventilated area. I recommend watching a video on using spray fixatives. You may have wondered why I chose a cream color paper over a white paper. From this visual, you can see why. The cream color paper with the sanguine gives you a bright, warm color, whereas the white paper with the sanguine gives us a cooler tone. The preference is all up to you and which one you want to use. The objective of the reductive technique is to work from the mid value, in this case our sanguine color, out to the lightest value and to the darkest value. To begin the drawing, I've transferred my drawing over to the tone paper, and using a hard charcoal pencil I outlined my object, and now what I'm going to do is our shadow is on this side, a little bit over here, and we want to maintain the sanguine colored paper, so I'm going to begin just lightly adding charcoal to the shadow area. We're going to do this in layers. I'm going to start with the hard pencil first. We'll do a little blending, and then we'll add some darker charcoal to it. Next, I'm going to take my stump and I'm going to begin to blend. Next, I'm going to take a medium charcoal, which is softer than the previous one, and I'm going to just add in some dark areas. After adding that darker charcoal, now I'm going to come back again with my stump and begin to smooth out my value, because the softer the charcoal, the more dust we have, which actually aids in this process. In fact, if you get too much charcoal on your stump, you can in fact brush it off. I'm going to do both sides of this one. We want to just nice and smooth blend this out, because it now have a nice dark value. When I'm in this area here between the values, again run your stump with the direction. Now with the dirty stump, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this charcoal into my shadow area. We'll extend that out. And if there's not enough, just take some charcoal and add it to it, just lightly to give us some pigment to move around. Next, I'm going to add my highlight, which runs down this way in the front. First, I'm going to just put a little bit of highlight on the spout. Now for this, we basically want to touch the paper, drag a little bit. Now this sanguine powder was put on the toneless paper, and then we use the workable fixative. The workable fixative will hold the pigment in place, but the paper is hard sized, as we call it. It means it has a coating on that makes it easy to erase. And of course, what happens is erasers are abrasive, so in this case I can actually remove some of that a way to fix things, like for instance down here my shadow got a little bit wild, so if I take the sponge that has a little bit of sanguine powder, I can pretty much pull this out of the way, correct it. I could take my original sponge from the sanguine powder and actually add some powder to it, correcting that mistake and softening that edge. What I do is then take this clean sponge and basically just pull down. Using my drafting brush, lightly brush this pigment out of there. So we have our highlight in, we have used our stump, and we have blended, and let's just come back in and add a few details. We're losing our decorative ring here, so what I'm going to do is add that back in with the pencil. Same here where the lid makes contact with the top. I want to have a seam here, even in that shadow. We can also take our kneaded eraser and, for instance, where the highlight is, just add a little bit of highlight over in this direction along that decorative ring. And we could do that underneath and above. Here it's a seam, so we don't need that. I think we'll put a little bit more highlight here. Pull this down a little bit. So we have now our highlight back in there, and what I'm going to do is take my clean stump and just softly on both sides continue, just finish up that little bit of gradation. Okay, we have this in here. I need to fix this shadow area here by just adding a little more charcoal. And then I'll take my stump and blend that back smooth. I'm going to add a little more highlights to the foreground and to give it a little bit of more contrast. So what I'm going to do is just take my kneaded eraser and pull. So there we have it, our toned paper charcoal reductive technique. And this can be done with landscapes, it can be done with still lifes, it can be done with figurative work. Just let your imagination go. Materials and Methods Matter was inspired by my book, Making Art, Materials and Techniques for Today's Artist. For more videos on Materials and Methods Matter, as well as lesson plans and other instructional videos, visit Thalo.com.